Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. I have Vinnie Potestivo, who's the host of I Have a Podcast on the show. I love talking with other podcast hosts and just understanding what makes them tick and just, being part of this podcast community. So, Vinnie, thanks for joining me today.
Dan, thanks for having me, bud. I appreciate being here.
Absolutely. Before we get into the conversation, though, just, introduce yourself a little bit to my listeners and tell them, who is Vinnie today?
Today, I love it. Who is Vinny today? Brilliant framing of that question, by the way. Often the best answers are yielded from awesome questions. Today, I stand to you as in front of you as a creator economist, someone who's been in the modern storytelling business since the late 90s. I got my start at MTV, Fox News actually first in 98, and then MTV in late 98 till about 2007, where we got to launch the talent development department. And from that came a whole genre of unscripted television programming that launched, catapulted some of the most powerful names in our industry then. Ashton Kutcher, Jessica Simpson, Sharon Osbourne. I can think about these major players that had to pass through a television studio to get their content seen, heard, and shared by an audience. I was lucky to be at TV when that was the gate, and I'm passionate about where we stand right now, where that gate no longer exists, where we can have our own podcast. Business owners can own intellectual property that's seen by millions of people on podcasts and broadcasts and cablecast and narrowcast and social media cast, and own it. And the power of owning intellectual property is so powerful, and how we're able to amplify and distribute and aggregate that content is all in the ownership of it. So I'm excited to share some some secrets, some hacks, some tricks, some things that I'm practicing, trying out right now myself. Maybe I'll share some things with you, some ideas that I'm trying out right now. And if maybe anyone who's listening to this might be ahead of me, then reach out to me and help me out. This does not need to be a one-way street, this relationship here between the listener and you and I, Dan, just because we're lucky enough to be in the room. So again, thank you for this opportunity to chat.
I love it, and so much that I want to unpack there. And one of the things I want to, go back to what you said is just, the opportunity that we have today, being able to podcast and have this platform, definitely not something that was around years ago. So many different gatekeepers in that industry, and even when you think of, the music industry, how technology has allowed independent artists to really flourish. I mean, artists that, had a ton of talent that just couldn't break through that door. I'm an author as well. I've published, 3 books. I've done both ways through a publisher and independently. And I've actually kind of gone back and said, look, I'm just publishing independently from here on out, because that ownership of that intellectual property, that IP that you were talking about, is so important. And you hear that with musicians so many times talking about, they had these great songs that they wanted to release, but the record company was saying, no, 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 that's not going to sell. We want to go this direction. We want to go this direction. We want to polish it. We want to do this. So I do think we're in a pretty special time right now to really be able to go out and, kind of spread our wings as, creators, I guess, is a pretty good term for it. So,
They call it.
yeah,
That's the guilty. It's kind of. I'm so mad about that term. I remember in television when they were like, "Oh no, I love your shows. They're my guilty pleasures," and I'm like, "Hold up, a guilty? Like you gotta diminish. You have to qualify my." By the way, it's funny. We're now in this like creator economy. I started TV in the real people economy. Afterwards was the expert economy, followed by the influencer economy. Now we're in the creator economy. So if you're an editor, by the way, you better get ready. Editors, curators, I think they are due to have their economy soon. And by the way, I don't know about you, but like, what story do we share that hasn't been edited? I mean, but by the way, there isn't a single biblical story that any of us share now in 2023 that wasn't edited masterfully by King James, the most famous editor in the world. To literally show that's the proof how much power is in editing. And this is why I love showing up as a guest, to be honest. Here's my guilty pleasure. That's so rude that I just said that. But here's my guilty pleasure is that I trust you to do whatever you want with it. And I trust that I'm going to love it because I probably wouldn't have made the same decisions as you. Or maybe you'll say, we leave everything in. Or maybe you say, we take the ums, whatever the process is, I would have done it differently. And I know that. That's what I love most about being a guest. And
Yeah,
I think that I have that mentality even in Thanksgiving too. I'm like, I'm not going to come into your house and tell you how to decorate it, but I'm
right.
going to do my research. I'm going to make sure I know what your kids are up to. I'm going to have things to talk about. And I'm going to show up with valuable dessert and trays so that I can bring some stuff home with me too, because this is collaborative. I don't want it to end when that record button ends. That's not why I'm podcasting. That's not where the power in people lives.
Yeah,
It's not in the record. It's not in the short time frame that we actually create these podcasts. This is the magic of networking right now. It's how we put this to use is powerful. I know because I did this at MTV in the 90s. I hung out in the studio. I met hundreds, if not thousands, of high output creators. And for 15, 20 years, worked my magic in TV through the people and the networking that I was able to do there in television. I know that I can do it again in podcasting. I know that we can do it again in podcasting. I'm all committed. I'm fully leaned in.
yeah, and I love that, and that's one of the things I love about the podcasting community is what I like to call it. It's very similar to
Yeah.
what my wife and I discovered in the RV community when we started living full time in RV. Is that it's just a different level of people, and there's no competition. Um, that I've found anyway, and maybe I'm just lucky, but um, between podcasters, like, so you have a show, but you're also a guest. I have a show, but I'm also a guest. And like you said, it's that collaboration. Like, you want to see my show succeed. I want to see your show succeed. It's not like, oh, Vinny's here and I'm here and I got to pass him. And, that doesn't exist. It's just like, we're just out there helping each other. I think that's something that this world is really lacking today.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think part of the reason why in podcasting, part of the reason why that happens is because we know that we're surrounded by experts from completely different fields. And like the podcasting economy now thinks of the creator economy as an actual valid, GDP appearance and like so we actually exist. We are real podcasters is like a real job. But most podcasters don't identify as podcaster first. Most podcasters identify as business owner or baker or lawyer or mom or individual, or there's another component to them that is first in that list, that multi hyphenate list of output. For me, I called my podcast I Have a Podcast. Well, actually, two reasons. One, because everyone says it, and I was, when I think of naming a TV show, I always like to play with idioms. So if someone thinks they've heard it before or can claim it as something that they have said themselves, there's like a little bit of the ego that I'm trying to poke at. Like, look, I named my podcast the same thing that you said 1,000 times. I'm not genius. You're genius. You've been saying it longer than me. I just got the R, the little register. I just paid $2,000 to get the little registered R. And now I take that as my business. So I went and got ihaveapodcast.com as a Google News verified news source. So I can write creator profiles, highlights on podcasters and give them an elevated experience, an elevated presence on Google just by publishing content that hits Google. And by the way, I also just recently this month connected that site to Bing, to Yahoo, to Flipbook. There's a couple of other news aggregators that are really important at the top of funnel to reach the crevices so that you don't have to niche your story down. I can niche the audience down. And I can help you get discovered on a blog aggregator. I'm kind of jumping the gun here as I just said what I said, but I can help you get discovered on a blog aggregator quicker than probably getting someone to discover you from your podcast episode in podcasting. Because I know how to take your podcast blog and the blog about an episode, say, so to speak, and put it in an aggregator and let you get discovered, let you have the visibility when someone's looking to find you, take action, read it, share it, perhaps, especially share it to social media versus what we try to do right now, which is a lot of social media. A lot of amplification we rely on social media for amplification. I know that aggregation is probably one of the highest forms of top disbursement that I can think of that will have the most impact on thousands of blogs. and I can stand out in Google as a podcaster, then I think I can stand out as a podcaster. Because to be honest, my numbers in social media are not like 30,000, 50, 100 million, whatever these crazy numbers are with the blue checks and the
Right.
bippity boppity boop, the whole weird celebrity component to the creator economy. I'm actually very curious to see what happens. Not that I'm in favor of it, but I'm curious to see what happens with Twitter and what they're talking about in terms of changing the verification process and making it be something that people pay for to maintain, and like what that would mean. So curious to see how that impacts us, because you're right, there's so much weight and gravity is put on the celebrity component of it. The last thing I ever want someone to do is chase fame. That's like a permanent, that's like God telling you to walk east or west. There's no end to that. If you can't find that direction in yourself, if you start looking for alternative, the out external, input, you're going to find it because you're looking for it. You're going to find what you're looking for. I think that's where having clarity and a dream and a vision and knowing how what you're doing today will fit into the future of what you're doing. And podcasting is just it's a great breadcrumb.
Yeah.
It's a great way to see what I've been up to, and it's a great way to see what I'm about to make an impact on. And if you want to be along for the ride with me, I can't make it easier than through podcasting.
Yeah. No, it really is a great platform. And, it's kind of funny, what you said about what are you ultimately chasing? Because, um, I think we see it all the time, especially in the celebrity world with, the number of drug addictions and overdoses and suicides from celebrities, where even once they achieve that, fame and fortune, they still find that they're missing something. And if you don't have, um, that inner peace beforehand, um, you're never going to get it with all these other external things. And, that's one of the reasons why I love being able to share stories and tell stories of other people. And for me, like my podcast isn't about me. It's not about, what I'm doing. It's always about my guest and about my listeners. And,
Yeah.
I think when you're, approaching it that way, um, you're going to be a lot more at peace, regardless of what the results are in the end, for
Yeah.
sure. So, tell me a little bit about, um, you know, you were someone who was always kind of behind the scenes, and then, with this new medium, this podcast platform, you jumped out there, and now you're a host. Which, again, for me, even though I'm the host, I'd never make it about me. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you're probably in that same boat where, I have a podcast isn't about you. It's really about telling the stories of your guests. So just tell me what that transformation was like,
Oh
and
yeah.
how you were able to still kind of deflect that light on, that's going on to you almost automatically, you know, over to your guests.
For me, it's about control. I have too much control over my podcast. That's what it really is. I have final say, I have final cut, I have publishing ability, I literally can control every single millisecond of my podcast. And in some ways, that's tremendously exhilarating and can be debilitating at times if I don't create boundaries to thrive in. By the way, the same thing I learned in TV. You can't just jump the ship because all of a sudden there's an amazing storyline that has nothing to do with the intent or integrity of the show. It'll confuse the audience. They won't come back. No one, if I'm tuning into HGTV and I don't see a house get crushed and then rebuilt, I will probably never turn that channel on again. Just once you do me wrong, and I feel burned that way. It's so funny to think of. The power of podcasting for me. Do you know what happened? I've been using Skype and Zoom for interviewing for a long time, 20 years now. I've been since 2007, 2009. I've been using Skype Recorder to do reality TV interviews, and it was always very normal to me because I cut my voice out. So when I would do what we're doing now, except that what I would send to the network is literally just your narrative. And I would take photos and imagery and some B-roll and lots of music and title cards, and I would fill in the holes, but you wouldn't get any part of my voice. What changed in the last 3 years, the silver lining of the pandemic, is that so many of us were forced to use technology to connect and communicate that we normalized talking through a lens and a camera and a light on us and a microphone in front of our face. We normalize this. This doesn't feel like I'm doing anything. It feels like such a normal process. This is just how we do podcasting. I just get to be myself. I'm not the on-camera version of myself because I trust this platform. I haven't quite taken the leap yet to television. I don't know if I would, mostly because I appreciate this experience. And I got to be honest, I trust myself and I trust you more than I trust myself and a TV network in that environment because there's a performative piece. I'm afraid of doing something that they might want for that might not make me look great. And I've certainly seen producers do that to lots and lots of talent. The last thing I want to do is put myself in a situation where my integrity is compromised, where my dignity is compromised, and I have a lot of control over that. That being said, I got too much control. I got some control issues. You can hear this. I got to send this episode into my therapist to make sure they hear it because I'm listening to myself, and I think that the counterpart to that, now I'm listening. The counterpart to having so much control is inherently showing up. I make more time to be a guest than I do to be a host. I wish that I would have started off guesting. I love guesting on podcasting, actually. It's as much as I love the creative process, I loved the talent development process. I loved this internal process that I had to go through to think of when I'm talking about things, when I'm talking about some of the names that we talk about, how can I talk about them in a way that are irreverent, that are impactful, not in a showcasey, flashy way. And but the last thing I want to do is people to think I only work with celebrities or am a celebrity branding agent. Like my least favorite, like it's a trigger word for me when people say, "Oh, he's a celebrity branding agent." I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. That's not even a thing. Um, I work with people. Afterwards, they become really famous. That's just how it happened to be because of where I was at MTV. When you look 20 years into the future, that's what happened. So imagine what we're going to do with the focus, the community that we're building now as podcasters. That's why I'm so leaned into Podmatch. If I can, we talked about Podmatch. We met. There's a if you are out there and you are listening, and you are looking to just get your brand out there and don't know where to start, I would say go to Podmatch, be a guest. And Podmatch does all the heavy lifting for you. They connect you with somebody who's like-minded based on the tags that you provide the information for. They actually have a whole system where you can schedule it. It's a really seamless system, and it's how I'm single-handedly scaling my brand right now is through Podmatch. And it's not through the number of podcasts that I'm scaling my brand. It's through the number of podcasters. That
Yeah.
nowhere else would I be able to meet this quality of have this quality time with one-on-one people that has this level of output. And what I'm trying to do is meet as many different audiences as possible so that when it's time to connect audiences and create community, because when more than one audience comes together, that's community. So when your audience and my audience can be somewhere together, that's powerful. And Podmatch shows up and in places. They show up in like real life at conventions and real tangible places. So I think they've got like just under 13,000 people. So if you went to a school with that many people, then you know that's an attainable number.
Yeah.
We can make impact in this community, and I'm really leaned in. And for those of you who are looking to find the community or find a way into podcasting, Podmatch is a great way to do it. And Dan, you have your Podmatch link somewhere where people can click on it. You put that. All right. So people, if you're listening to this, you have no clue what I'm talking about. Dan will have put the link, his Podmatch link, in the podcast notes. And I please, please, please invite you to the platform. And I can't wait to meet you here and share in this energy. There's nothing I love more than when someone's like, "Oh, I listened to your podcast with Dan," and then I got on podcast and here we are. And then we'll give a big shout out to you, Dan, when that moment happens. It's reciprocal. So I believe in that. That's the power of us. We can do that. People can do that. And our relationships are the things that fuel that.
No doubt. And it really is a great platform because, just to revisit a couple things that you said, the silver lining of the pandemic was normalizing what we're doing right now,
Yeah.
which for me was really stepping out of my comfort zone. I told you that I had another podcast I basically did from 2012 to 2020 for my organization. And I loved it. But every single podcast I ever did was face to face in a studio sitting, 3 feet across the table from someone. And that's the way, you know, my plan for this podcast was going to be. It was going to be, people that we met in our travels, um, sitting face to face at a picnic table in a campground telling their story. And then all of a sudden, you know, we're buying our RV the day that the governor of Pennsylvania is issuing shutdown orders. We're taking our house off the market. Everything's changing. And, I'm sitting here trying to figure out, well, how am I going to do podcasts if I can't sit with someone, if I can't
Mhm.
be with someone? And, so I had to kind of step into this new space of, recording on Zoom and recording virtually. And, it's really taken off. And even this past summer, we have not traveled a whole lot. We got back into Pennsylvania. A family member of ours passed away. We stayed in town for an extended period that we weren't planning on. And Podmatch really, put me over the top to continue interviewing and meeting, people like this. And, since then, it's just really, it's such a great platform. And like you said, you go in there and kind of find those like-minded people. You can, it shows you the matches, or you can just go searching for people that you're interested in. And with my show, as I've mentioned, so many times in the past, it's just such a wide variety of guests that I have on my show. And it really just comes down to, like, if you're a caring human, like when it says what's the perfect
Mhm.
guest for your show, I put in
Mhm.
caring human. That's really what I'm looking for, regardless of whatever the other background is. It's just people who care about humanity and care about, you know, what's going on and how we can push the world, forward in a more positive manner than what society is doing today. So yeah, definitely reiterate, if you're new to podcasting, if you're new to guesting and figuring out how you get on more podcasts, Podmatch is definitely the way to go. And that is a completely unendorsed
Yeah.
endorsement of Podmatch. It's just that great of a
Yeah.
platform that the two of us felt that we needed to
By
bring
the
it up
way,
for
if
sure.
if you don't have the time to podcast, Podmatch is your answer. If you don't have the contacts to podcast, Podmatch is your answer. If you don't, there's just so it's a great tool to just get out there and find ways to connect with people. And anything I can do to help you out in that process, if anyone has any questions, because I love the platform and I spend a lot of time on it as well. Feel free to reach out. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, so feel free to reach out and just ask a simple little question.
Yeah.
I'd much rather answer a simple question than a very complicated one. Don't wait and stack your questions with like a 5 question. Hey, how are you? Blah blah blah. Just hit me up with a single and like let's become friends. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't dump it all on me at
Yeah,
once.
it's like at the end of this interview, if you say, "Okay, where can people reach you?" I'm like, they're like they trust you. Why do they gotta reach me? They could, in fact, they shouldn't reach me. They should get onto whatever podcast platform they're listening to, and they should leave this episode a 5-star review. I appreciate that very much. I want to see lots. By the way, I want to see this date 5-star review and why Dan is such a great host. If you're listening, that's the call to action. That's the energy, because I will be looking when this episode comes out. I will be looking in the notes to see who's engaged. And I love saying hi. I'm nosy like that. I love watching people's growth, and um, it's a weird thing to say, but like interjecting and as from my point of view, knowing what I know, how supportive and how important it is to have supporters who really truly lift you up. I love nothing more than finding out who your biggest fans are and who your biggest supporters are. I love that. Um, what we get to do.
Yeah. That's that's awesome. Um, I mean, it's funny, Vinny, because you've got such you know a circle of, all kinds of celebrities, that you're surrounded by, but yet it seems like you're just, you know everybody's just a regular person to you. Like you don't get caught up in, that this person is in the movies and this person has their own TV show. What is it about you that just can kind of level that playing field, that it's really just about who that person is, not what their status is, so to speak?
Oh, hmm. There's probably some answer in mindset. I have to be honest. I don't know if it's something that I take conscious. I don't know how conscious I am of that perspective, but I would say I'm exposed. The people that I work with, I'm exposed to them in a really intimate and long form way, and I don't know. I don't know. They're all just like us. Mandy Moore, because you know why? Everything that starts ends. I don't know. Mandy Moore, I mean, I think of her, I think of Mandy being a 15-year-old more than anything, but she just had a huge TV show. She's still up for awards. This Is Us has made tremendous impact. So many of us over the last few years have watched that show and it got us through the pandemic. But
Wife and I were my wife and I were two of them that watched
yeah,
it.
right. But like so many of my other friends, but she's pregnant. She actually just had her second child, like many of my other friends. And um, I think that the people I work with, I think it's a lot to do with the people I work with now that I'm thinking about this answer. I think that if I worked with people who are obsessed with celebrity, that maybe I would start to value celebrity because that's what they valued. But Sharon Osbourne didn't want to be a celebrity. She wanted to be powerful. Ashton Kutcher didn't want to be a celebrity. He already was a celebrity. He already had a number one TV show and box office hits in terms of box office hits. But what he wasn't seen as was a media mogul, and what ultimately he ended up doing. Jessica Simpson changed her narrative with Newlyweds, which turned into a career that ultimately spawned $1 billion empire at Macy's. Um, I was in the room when Jessica Simpson was told no, she can't be a VJ. Reading the cue card was hard, and all the things that you had to do was like overwhelming. But Mandy, I saw them be good at things and be bad at things. I saw them you know what I did? I saw them try things. How about that? Maybe that's part of the answer is that when you watch someone who you normally see in a refined scenario try something new and it not work out and try again and it not work out and try again and then you think it not work out and then they fix it in post and then you realize that's how it's done. They fix it in the edit, and then you realize that's how it's done. Wow, I didn't even think about this, but that's how I do my podcast. I approach my podcast episodes as pure conversation. I don't even, it's like a very weird Al Pacino effect that I do. Al Pacino doesn't like action and cut on set. He just likes to walk in on character. He gets there, and then eventually the scene starts, and then eventually it ends. It's a weird thing to say. I was an extra in The Irishman, and I got to be in a scene with him, and I love this idea of any space you're in, now's the right time. I don't have to wait for you to say, all right, now we're going to record, now we're going to cut. So for me, it's always recording. I just record 24/7 when it's time for me to do my podcast day. I don't want to think about now we're recording or not because I don't want to think about changing me. I try to show up as me as possible. And I know that I'm young in this game of being on camera, and there's still some instinct that I have to tighten up, clench, clean my throat. Some of these things that I do that are signals to me that I'm hyper aware. And it's good to be aware, but hyper aware of my presence as opposed to my message. And if I'm leading with my presence over my message, as I said, I'm a 6'3", I'm a big guy. So like that can come across as intimidating or powerful in a way that isn't kind and considerate and exciting and energized. And I'm mindful of that.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. But is there anything that you want to, bring to the listeners' attention that we didn't cover in the conversation so far?
Oh gosh, I mean, we've done so much. Let me simplify this. We've talked about discovery a bit, visibility. People think to increase their discoverability, they need to increase their visibility, and I'm here to shed that myth. I'm here to let you know that the power of discovery is visibility to the power of sharing. And that if sharing doesn't happen after you've become visible, you will not get discovered. If someone, no photo, no proof. This is the time and age that we live in. Uh, Michael Bublé had a Christmas special. It launched his career. My mom watched it. She thinks she discovered him. Why? Because she saw it. She came to church the next day and told everyone. The week after that, his album was on sale at Walmart, so she got 15 of them. We all got them in our mail. She shared merch. She shared an experience. She shared this family moment that we could have collectively together. There was ego that was served, and my mom, and being the person who found them, she got to be the person who shared this information, and that's just a brilliant discovery strategy, Michael Bublé, when you think of how to launch a brand. For us, what are we doing? How are we making it easy to be shared? Now, are we giving contacts out? Because contacts are networking. Is it social media? Social media, obviously shared. Merch. There's a reason why hats with our logos exist. It's not because we're trying to make $16, $20 per hat. It's because there's something really cool about going to a public space with this hat on that has a logo, a signal, a like-mindedness, a flag that says, I believe in something. And for me to see someone with a hat at the same concert and knowing that we're connected in this day and age where we feel so disconnected from so many people, that gives us that opportunity to connect. So it's these little pieces that are shareable that we should be more mindful of creating instead of increasing visibility, which is nice, right? I'm not saying more social media posts. I'm saying more shareable social media posts. Less likable posts and more shareable posts. Less savable posts and more shareable posts. In fact, if I give you my number, don't call me until you share it with somebody that you truly believe could benefit from having a conversation with me before or after you have the call. That's the power in sharing, and that's something I want to point out in terms of discoverability versus visibility.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Now I know you said you'd kick this back to me, but I'm still going to, give you the opportunity
Yeah,
to let people know how they can find you
yeah,
directly. Where can they find
yeah.
Vinnie at on the internet?
As of now in 2022, 2023, LinkedIn, Twitter, I'm on all the social media platforms. I'm still on Twitter. VPE.tv is my website. Victor Paul Edward, VPE.tv. I have an unlimited amount of tactics up there that I make available. So 100 awards worthy of winning, 50 creator platforms that pay, over 60 podcast directories that I think you should be on in the year 2023. How to get your podcast on IMDb and to give yourself credit and give your crew credit, to get your guests credit, and to get your visibility recognition that you need on your podcast, all from being able to submit to IMDb, which is free, by the way. All that at vpe.tv, and I appreciate that.
No, love it. So, Vinnie, that brings me to a final question. As you know, the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People in Many Little Places, which comes from the opening lyrics of the Michael Franti song Gloria, which go, when many little people in many little places do many little things, then the whole world changes. So it's one of the little things that Vinnie does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place.
Oh, I love that question. I think I ask myself this question actually every day because I never want it to be the same answer. Today I woke up and I thought, you know what? Here's the answer. Here's the short answer, and let me get very clear about this. I lead by example. I'm not just asking for people to be kind. I'm not asking for people to share contacts. I lead by example. So on LinkedIn this morning, I talked about the power of networking, and I was seeing a trend that people who focus on who and not how to resolve an issue, people say, I need someone to help me through this. Not I need something to help me through this. People who focus on finding people to get them over or through obstacles tend to be more successful. And I said, so let me know who you're looking for, their title, the description, maybe what they're due. So if I know this person, I can tag you in. And then I realized no one's gonna be brave enough to be the first. I'm gonna have to lead by example and start telling people what I'm looking for. So if you are a bigwig at a podcasting company and at a directory and you have the ability to onboard independent podcasters, I'd love to connect with you. I have hundreds, soon thousands, but hundreds of podcasters I'd love to talk to you about. If you are in copywriting, I'm looking for a couple of different copywriters for a couple of clients, including myself. So I'm looking for a copywriter out there. And I realized that just by creating space, by igniting the conversation, I'm able to fuel it by example. And I found that when I lead by example, I tend to get what the intent of that action, I tend to get a clearer, pure version of a response versus leaving it up to whim.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's very important. I think that's definitely lost art nowadays, where people are more, do as I say, not as I do. So
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's a fresh perspective, an old school perspective that's been lost over the past couple of years for sure. So I
I
love
see
that.
that it works, and especially on LinkedIn, where LinkedIn rewards content creators for conversations and not necessarily for post performance. Depends on the length of conversation, not the impact, not the actual article or headlines or some of the other things that other networks do, other platforms do. I think that's also why I really like LinkedIn, is how it rewards the conversation, and I tend to like the conversations a little bit better.
Yeah.
I tend to not know what all the, I can't, I don't know what all the silly things are on Instagram sometimes. So I spend more time trying to educate myself on why this is funny. And then I'm like, wait, what? I just spent 10 minutes and like, that's what it's all about? I gotta shoot my video quickly.
I love that. I love that. Ben, I really appreciate you being on the show. It's a great conversation. For folks out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com or danclouser.com. While you're there, pick up an issue of my most recent book, The Journey of My Mother's Son, Volume 1. Vinny, again, really appreciate the conversation. Thanks for taking the time to be on the show.
Thank you, Dan. I'll see you soon.
Bet.